Hello my friends, Hank here, and today we are going to build up the American Heritage Museum's M18 Hellcat down in 1/35th scale. In the first episode of my new series, Up Close and Personal, I had the incredible opportunity to get inside the Collings Foundation's fully restored M18 in an effort to get the ultimate scale model reference material. So now, we get to use the footage and transfer what we learned into creating this slightly smaller version. With that said, let's get over to the bench and get into it. We'll be using Tamiya's excellent 1/35th scale 2022 release of the Hellcat for our base today, and if you've been following the channel for some time, you'll probably remember that I have built this kit up in the past and have a full step-by-step tutorial for the process, but this video will be a little different. The focus here is going to be on how we can recreate a specific vehicle, what changes and small tweaks we have to make to capture its likeness, and some key details we have to pay attention to along the way. We'll start here by getting our basic lower hull assembled so we can tackle our suspension, the torsion bar system that is a key component of what made this vehicle so successful, as we learned over at the museum.
This is called torsion bar suspension, which I'm sure you've dealt with at some point. The M24 chassis uses the same system, M41 Walker Bulldog. A very, very popular system for the time. Contemporary vehicles as well. The Soviets and the Germans were also using torsion bar at the time. Really, the bogie suspension became outdated around the start of the war. On a lighter vehicle like this, you want to go with the lightest suspension you can get. Torsion bar does a fantastic job of both being light and providing a really smooth ride.
At this point in our build, we're going to proceed with the kit-included T69 tracks instead of the tracks currently installed on the American Heritage Museum's M18. It turns out I couldn't find any aftermarket rubber tracks for the M18, but as we learned, this was for a pretty specific reason.
So this was purely changed for our purposes here at the museum. Metal tracks tend to really tear up things like hot blacktop and grassy fields like we use for our reenactments. And so to limit that, we swapped this out for the tracks off the M39 armored utility carrier. So essentially this just provides us with a major quality of life improvement. You'll notice that the sprocket is also different from the original Hellcat sprocket.
The original's got a lot of teeth on here. This is a lot more reserved.
So this is the same sprocket that comes off the M39.
It is?
The Hellcat was never designed to have rubber tracks on it.
Interesting.
So you'll never see a picture of one in service with rubber tracks because by the time the M39 came into service, the M18 was already decommissioned.
On the way out.
For a special little detail on this kit, let's go ahead and drill some holes in our front fenders here to better replicate what we saw on our full-sized M18. And at this point, let's mount our hull hatches for the driver and co-driver in the opened positions. Part of the magic of the American Heritage Museum is that nearly everything is unbuttoned so you can look inside these beautiful machines, so we're going to do the same on our little fella here. Before we move on up to our turret, I want to get our pioneering tools installed on our hull. The AHM's M18 has most of its tools in place, but I did notice that the barrel cleaning rods weren't in position. We can replicate this effect quite easily. We're just going to lop the side brackets off of the rods themselves, and then we're going to cement those end pieces into place like so. And with a little bit of putty to plug the old guide holes, now we've got ourselves an empty cleaning rod bracket. Lovely. Shifting gears up to our turret assembly, we can use our newfound knowledge of the M18's internal layout to understand each of these little components we're cementing into place as we go along. The first assembly is our manual traverse, which I'm pleased to say looks just like the real deal. Next up, we've got our turret azimuth indicator, which was just to my left when I was in the gunner's position. Our radio set drops into the turret bustle like so. And then we can join the two halves of our turret. The commander's position ring slots right into place like so. This was one of my favorite spots in the turret. It was actually pretty cozy with these backrests here. And now we can add our ready rack over in our loader's position. I chose to leave a few of the slots empty just like we saw in the museum's M18. Moving on to the breech and body assembly for our M1A2 76mm made gun here, Tamiya's done a great job capturing the 45-degree tilt of the weapon for easy access for our loader. And you'll note here, we're going to go ahead and mount the full recoil guard around our breech. The recoil guard is removed in the AHM's M18 because, well, the gun ain't firing as much as it used to. Since the M18 at the museum gets a lot of use as a reenactment vehicle, it's quite a bit easier to navigate around the turret with those recoil arms removed, but we're not worried about climbing around in our 1/35th scale version, so let's put them in there. At this stage, it's time to add our gun barrel, but we need a little aftermarket addition here. The museum's M18 is fitted with the M1A2 76mm main gun with the muzzle brake installed, and the Tamiya kit only comes with the early brakeless M1A1. To remedy this, we'll utilize Def Model's lovely aftermarket M1A2 metal and resin barrel set. Beautiful. Let's install our tarp cover brackets for the turret, and then we'll continue working on our fighting compartment assembly. This Tamiya kit, again, does a fantastic job capturing the layout of the M18's turret interior. We can see here the seats for the gunner and the loader, as well as the standing position in the back there for the TC. And the electric traverse handle and manual elevation crank are exactly where they're supposed to be, right in front of our gunner there. Gorgeous. With the rest of our turret guts plugged into place, we'll cement on all of our grab handles and the external turret baskets, as well as our spare track rack on the back there. With our main construction complete, the last thing I want to do is add a few little bits of stowage from my extras bin to add a similar feel to the current presentation of the AHM's M18. I've got a couple musette bags in the front bins there, as well as some packs and tarps in the larger rear baskets. Alright, it is time to move on to painting. As always, we're going to prime this whole kit up with a nice base to work up from. We're going to use some black primer for everything today. And our main camo color will be this olive drab dark base. We want to paint everything in OD except for our rubber road wheels, our return rollers, and our tracks. The canvas mantlet cover on the museum's M18 is a slightly different shade of olive drab than the rest of the vehicle, so let's mask this portion off and spray that up with some standard US olive drab. With our spray work complete, let's move on to some detail painting. Not a ton we have to do here, but let's start with our periscopes and the padding on the inside of our hatches with some flat black. And we'll do some careful brushwork to paint up the gun sight and the seats inside of our turret with that same black paint. And we can continue to move around the vehicle and paint in any stowage or other small details that need to be hit as well. With our brushwork complete, it's time to move on to decaling. As always, it's a good idea to spray the whole kit with a coat of gloss varnish to protect your work so far before moving on to decaling or weathering. Decaling this vehicle to replicate the M18 at the American Heritage Museum will be an exercise in digging through the trusty spare decal bin. Unfortunately, the decals included with the Tamiya kit don't exactly match the markings on this museum vehicle, so we're going to have to do some finagling. And this is another great opportunity for me to remind everyone, don't ever throw away your unused decals. You're never going to know when you need them. The museum's M18 has a fully encircled US star on the front of the transmission cover. Fortunately, I do have one of these from another US armor kit. And the turret has 2 plain stars on either side. These will be liberated from this M26 Pershing decal set. Hull numbers. Oh boy. The Museum M18 is hull number 40105665, and I somehow managed to find other serial numbers containing the correct digits to slice up and create this Frankenstein's monster. So let's get these on here, carefully. And about a half hour later, we've got the correct hull number on there. Whew, now just gotta do the other side as well. The American Heritage Museum's M18 is in the markings of a TD serving with the 603rd Tank Destroyer Battalion, so we'll leverage more spares to recreate those stencils as well, and once everything is on there, we can spray the whole kit with another gloss coat to prepare for weathering. As we've been doing in our last few build tutorial videos, we're going to start with a simple pin wash of fluory dark dirt, cut with a little bit of tap water to help it flow into all of our nooks and crannies and accentuate the details of our model. To add a first pass of dirt and dust effects on our build, we're going to leverage a few different ammo pigments. We can gently tap these over our tracks and the undercarriage of our kit while our fluory wash is still wet to help those pigments bond to the vehicle. This looks super messy at first, but stick with it. We're going to be removing a lot of this excess and the result works out quite well. We can also add a little bit of the pigment onto the fenders and the upper surfaces of the hull and the turret to add some dirt and grime up there. Now at this stage, let's take our empty airbrush and blow a lot of that excess pigment off of the model. Wear your mask for this part, it gets a little messy. And now let's spray our kit with a coat of matte varnish to knock down some of that shininess and to help lock in a bit of that pigment work. For this particular display piece, I'm going to leverage an old vignette base that I built up years ago using a picture frame. If you'd be interested in seeing a tutorial on making a simple base like this, please do let me know down in the comments below. But for now, let's mount our model on there with a bit of super glue. Alright, now this is where this is all going to come together. To tie in all of our weathering effects, let's do a second pass of our same pigments to blend those dirt tones with our base and the dirt tones that are on our model. And in my opinion, every model kit needs at least one figure to help tell its story, so let's add a US crewman from Alpine Miniatures over in the assistant driver's position. The resemblance is uncanny, no? And with that, we've got a faithful 1/35th scale reproduction of the M18 Hellcat in the exact markings of the American Heritage Museum's vehicle. All that's left to do now is add a little plaque on there, and we can bring this thing over to meet its full-scale inspiration.
Thanks so much for watching, my friends. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and until next time, be well, happy building, cheers.